Hello YouTube people, Ruby here. If you are new to this channel, I'm a professional psychic medium, tarot reader, astrologer, and priestess. And today I'm going to walk you through all of the tarot and oracle decks that are currently sitting on my desk, on my desktop. I'm in the middle of my reading day, my professional reading day. So these decks, they're scattered everywhere. It's not going to be the most organized video, but these are the decks that I have been using the most in my personal practice, plus some decks that are out today because I'm working with them professionally. And this is always the content I want to see from creators. I want to know what decks they're working with and why in a very raw and authentic way. So we're going to get raw and authentic today because I haven't put too much thought into what I'm going to say. Just that I want to talk about the decks that are most alive for me. So we're just going to go through this deck by deck. We're not going to organize them by tarot and oracle. So first tarot deck on the list is the Lilifer Tarot. This is an indie deck that was sent to me by one of my Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much. This was such a sweet gift. I had not heard of this deck before it was gifted to me. And this deck is a Lilith and Lucifer theme deck. And so you would think it would be more dark, more chthonic, but it's actually so light and I want to say childish, but in the way that, the imagery really reminds me of like a children's book illustration. And I've been using this deck a little more recently for actually connecting in with the energy of Yeshua, Jesus Christ. I recently posted a TikTok about how Jesus and Lucifer are the same archetypal force. It was pretty polarizing, as you can imagine. I'm gonna stand by it. But you can see, this deck, while being themed around Lilith and Lucifer, it does have some Christian symbolism. We see the Sacred Heart right here. And I see both Lilith and Lucifer as these energies that invite us into a process of reclamation, reclaiming our power, reclaiming our sovereignty, reclaiming our authenticity, and not being afraid to challenge and question the status quo and existing power structures. I think this would be a lovely shadow work deck because it is so, it's so sweet and how do I say it, like more dreamy and cute in its imagery, while also being connected to, slightly more confrontational energy. And, I love that all of these like devil-like figures are painted more playfully. And I think it's a really lovely encouragement to not take shadow work or ourselves or our own demons so seriously sometimes, that we can have a more playful relationship with maybe what we feel are inner oppositional forces. So that is the Lilifer Tarot. Oh, and I was hoping I could show you either the Lucifer or the Lilith card, because in addition to having, all of the cards of the major and minor arcana, there's two additional cards in this deck, one for Lucifer and one for Lilith. All right, so next deck on this list is the Tarot of the Huntress tarot deck by Cara Small, Forest Moon Maiden, I believe is her handle on Instagram. This is actually the later edition of the deck that the creator sent me. Thank you so much. That was such a blessing. And this is one of my favorite decks. So having, both editions, I believe this is the second edition, I could be wrong, is something that really fills my heart, because if I really love a deck, especially if it's an indie deck and it's not going to be around forever, I want an extra copy so I can, have guaranteed longevity and how much time we are going to have together. I love this deck. I'm not going to talk about her too much because we've already talked about her a lot on this channel, but she's been coming in a lot for client readings lately. So that's why she's on the desk, is that, she's been really wanting to work with clients. And I also think that this deck is so aligned with the current astrological energy, which is, really inviting us to kind of break bonds and cords that keep us from being in our sovereignty, okay? So next on the list, I have not talked about this deck on the channel before, and I love her so much. This is now I can't remember the name of this deck. It's gonna come to me. The Void? I think the guidebook is in. This is the Void Tarot. Okay, this was actually an anniversary gift that my partner gave me. I love this deck. This has become one of my favorite decks. As a channeling device, it is perfect. Now, they saw me looking at it a couple months ago in Ritual Craft, at Ritual Craft, which is a metaphysical store in Denver, which if you haven't been and you live in the area, definitely worth checking out. And, I didn't get the deck when I first saw it because I was like, do I really need another tarot deck? It's a little on the pricier side, and it's not, totally my aesthetic. I'd seen it around, on Instagram and from other creators. And so I didn't purchase it. And my partner saw me looking at it and went back and picked it up for me. And I am so glad they did, because this deck has been feeding my spirit and feeding my soul and bringing in such accurate messages. I cannot believe. I went on the website to purchase another copy, and it is actually out of print. So I don't know if it's permanently out of print or if it's going to come back. It was in stock in store when my partner purchased it, but I believe it has since been sold out because I was really trying to get my hands on another copy. So this has been a big surprise. If you're into like Nosferatu, Gothic, literature and imagery, this one is one that I would look out for future restocks. It also has such amazing cardstock. When I first got my hands on it, I was afraid the cardstock would be a little too like heavy and harder to shuffle, but this shuffles like a dream. It has been one of my favorite decks so far this year. It's probably gonna show up on a best of list, we'll see. So next deck is the Cave of Sybil Oracle. I just talked about her, so we're not going to get too in the weeds with kind of diving into how I use this deck, because I've already talked about it. But this oracle with this tarot has been a really lovely pairing. So this is the Cave of Sybil Oracle that I believe is still available for purchase. It's an indie deck from deck creator Tara May. Been really liking using these cards also in ritual and spell work, right? Now, there's two divine feminine oracle decks that are always on my desk, and I've been actually using them for client readings a lot more than I usually do. They're usually mostly personal decks for me, but they've been showing up in client readings a lot. And the decks are the Divine Feminine Oracle by Megan Watterson, and then this is the Dark Goddess deck by Caitlin McCarthy. There is not too much overlap with the goddesses that are featured in these decks. A little bit, but not a lot. And so kind of using them in tandem has really, how do I say this? It gives more options. There's more faces of the Divine Feminine that are available to come through. So I'll use these decks together actually. And if you are on a priestess path and you are finding yourself connecting in with maybe different faces of the Divine Feminine that you aren't familiar with, like you're feeling an energy come in and you can't quite place it. This deck in particular has lots of like lesser known goddesses. So this is a great as like a learning tool or a way to discern, you know, what is this energy or what is this invitation that I'm feeling into and can't quite place. All right. So next deck, I just got this one. It came in very, very recently. So I've barely begun to work with her. This is the Oracle of the Mermaids deck by Lucy Cavendish. I have such like a love, sometimes extremely annoyed relationship with the Lucy Cavendish decks. They read so accurately, but sometimes the guidebooks are a little more difficult for me to navigate or sink my teeth into. But so far, I've actually been really enjoying the guidebook to this particular deck. I've been really connecting in with mermaid energy recently. As I shared on my Patreon, Aphrodite came in pretty strongly for me, kind of showing up as a dark goddess, kind of leading me into some more confronting initiations. And with Aphrodite came mermaids, sirens, who I've never worked with before, but they're showing up as more like elemental energies. I would say that's how they feel energetically. And I've been calling in mermaid and siren energy a lot. This deck, I feel like it is so sweet for my inner child. I feel like so spiritually nourished and fed by this deck, and it is so gorgeous. And I hope you can't hear this. My neighbor is playing really loud music all of a sudden outside. And as much as I soundproof this room, I still cannot get it to be soundproofed enough. So if you hear the noise, I apologize. I'm not refilming this. But anyways, the mermaids in this deck are so beautiful. It's a really nice card stock. I feel like the later Blue Angel releases always knock it out of the park. This isn't a recent deck, but I'm sure in the later editions it's gotten a card stock upgrade. And I'm really loving this one. I'm loving this one as much as I have been loving the Queen Mab Oracle, even though this is not as much of a shadow work deck. But just the sheer kind of joy and enjoyment of working with this one. And here, I'll show you one more. Oracle of the Mermaids by Lucy Cavendish. I think she's just so different than, any of the other Lucy Cavendish decks that I have. So the other Lucy Cavendish deck on the desk is the Lay Vampire Oracle, because like I said, I'm in the middle of my client reading day. I use this deck for almost every client reading. It's been this way for a really long time. Now, this deck has something similar to the next deck that I'm about to show you, which is that both this deck and the next deck, I'm not really going to talk about her or show you her because we've already talked about her at length on this channel, is that they sat in my collection for a couple of years before I really found my sweet spot and my connection with them. So this is a friendly reminder. If you aren't connecting with a deck in your collection, you don't need to give it away right away. I think we've all fallen prey to that impulse where we're not really feeling a deck, and so, we re-gift it or something. And now, sometimes just the connection with the deck isn't there. But this next deck I'm about to show you has sat in my collection for a while, and I have not had a deep connection with her until I pulled her out recently. And now I am so enjoying the journey that I am taking with this deck. I cannot even fully describe it. It is Oracle of the Witch, Reclaim Your Birthright. This is a mass market deck. I am not going to share how or why I'm working with this deck because I just talked about it on the Patreon. And so if you are in the Patreon community, in the Priestess Chronicles video that I just dropped, I think yesterday, I go into the hows and the whys around this deck and why it's come forward for me. But it's been one of those really sweet surprises from Spirit. So I just can't express enough how much working with this deck has been amplifying my practice. I originally got it to work with Hecate. Another energy has come forward. And it's been a really lovely surprise. And the card pulls around this are so clear, especially for informing me on, where to take my practice and my craft. I've been using this deck in conjunction with the Goddess of Love Tarot, which also has really come forward for me. And, it's the week of Valentine's Day. So how fitting to be working with the Goddess of Love Tarot. Now, I've already, talked about her at length, so I won't go, into it further, but I think you can find the full review for this deck, a year or so back on the channel. The last 3 decks on my desk, I'm going to move through rather quickly because we've talked about them, and they are decks that are here. 2 are more professional, 1 is more personal for why they are on my desk. The first is, of course, the Sistine Tarot by Rose Bay Tarot. She is out because she is the main deck I use for client readings. I have her new deck coming in the mail. I am really excited to, work with her latest offering because of how much I love this deck. So of course we have the Sistine Tarot, and then we have the Oracle of the Hecatean Path. I've been doing so many readings lately for people that are, beginning a journey with Hecate. And this deck, even if you aren't, looking for a message from Hecate specifically, reads very accurately, as a divinatory tool overall. I have shared, no hate to the creators of this deck. I've already shared that this is not my preferred artwork at all. And so it says a lot that this deck is constantly in my rotation, both personally and professionally, even though that is the case. It really speaks to how beautiful the energy is and how just precise a divinatory tool this is, that I work with it so much, even though it's not really my taste, which isn't, a criticism. I'm a Taurus in the 7th house with a Libra rising, so I'm very specific about my aesthetics. There's one more Oracle deck on my desk, which I just now viewed. I think we're gonna show you the last deck and then we will say goodbye for now. All right, so the last deck on the list on my desk is the Death Doula Oracle. I got this deck at Ritual Craft. I believe it is an indie deck. It doesn't say the name of the, it doesn't say the name of the deck creator on the box. There is a, you know, a tarot deck YouTuber creator that has talked about this deck before. You know, I think I was watching one of her videos where she was talking about it, and I was like, oh, that's so nice. Didn't really feel called to it. And then when I saw this deck in person, it was so stunning in person. I like got it. Like I got the hype. Like I totally got it. This is just so visually stunning. And I find it to be a really lovely tool for that, you know, inner reflection, self-reflection, like self-care type work. I've also really been enjoying pairing this with the Cave of Sybil Oracle. I haven't brought this deck too much into client readings, and I actually haven't really, you know, touched it as much in the last few weeks. But there is something that's so unique about this deck that I'm really glad that I added it to my collection. And I think there's a lot of different ways that you could use this deck and work with it. I think one of the reasons why I wasn't drawn to it when I first saw it is that I'm not a death doula. Like, it seemed very specific to like a certain healing art. But I would say this deck is broader than that. It's like the deck itself is the death doula, right? Like guiding us into cycles of shedding and release. And so you don't need to be a death doula to get a lot out of this deck. You just need to be maybe in a process of birthing something or releasing something, and looking for some extra energetic support in that process, okay? And the guidebook is very open-ended, it's very poetic, it's a deck that I think is less for divination, even though you could use it for divination. You can use any deck for divination. And it's more for, you know, I think really just receiving guidance and insight for yourself from yourself. Okay, or at least that's really how it's shown up for me. So that's officially all of the decks that have been hanging out with me on my desk as I've been moving throughout my reading days the last couple days. I think we'll see, you know, where the rest of winter takes me, if this is kind of the rotation or if some new decks come in. And if some new decks come in, I will definitely you know, film and share here. In the meantime, you can also find me on TikTok and Instagram. My TikTok is Cosmic Taurus Fairy. My Instagram is the same handle as here, Ruby Wolfstar. And then of course the links to join the Patreon, which is a reduced price. It went from $22 a month to $888 a month. So it's a really good time to join the Patreon. And also the link to book a one-on-one reading are down below. I've been getting so many more bookings from YouTube lately. Most of my bookings have come from my other social media outlets, but it's been so lovely to connect with the YouTube community specifically. And until I see you again, I am sending you love and I'm wishing you well.